Hang in there, it is!
That Smylie Kaufman for 61. Wow.
I'm Smylie Kaufman, and this is The Smylie Show.
Welcome back to another special edition of The Smylie Show. Second week in a row on the road at the FedEx Cup playoffs. Smylie, we opened last week. We were just right at the 18th green at TPC Southwind. We were saying, this might be our best set of the year. I think we got some competition here at the driving range at Castle Pines.
I think we're getting lucky that we haven't had just a scorching Monday preview recap episode. I mean, it was 78, 80 degrees on Monday in Memphis, and today it's like a crisp 78, 80 degrees with dry air. So honestly, after the heat that the players and some of the on-course reporters experienced last week, tell you what, it sure is nice just to have a little bit more of the cooler air here in Denver. So excited to get going.
The strokes gained sweat down considerable amount.
Yes.
There were a lot of my laundry bag was interesting arriving home from Memphis this last week.
A lot of salt.
A lot of salt in there. That's right. You and Denny McCarthy got deep into salt on Fridays with
That's
Smylie.
a conversation for another day for sure.
Yes. Well, as mentioned, last week coming off of FedEx St. Jude Championship, you were there on the ground for NBC for Golf Channel, and we are going to get to a preview of this week, the BMW Championship here at Castle Pines and all the storylines there. We're going to be joined a little bit by Eric Cole, who played his way in to the top 50, obviously making it to this week, but in addition to that, 2025 signature event. So a lot to get to, and of course, we're going to bring you a Wednesday show again on site here at Castle Pines, but worth, of course, first breaking down all the action last week in Memphis. And boy, there was a lot of it at the top of the leaderboard, but also around that top 50 cut line, which, let's start big picture before that. I find it so compelling to have action throughout the day.
Yeah.
Right? Like where you can turn the broadcast on, early into the window and still be watching guys and seeing movement, and he's in, now he's out. I mean, we're going to go through all that with Eric Cole in a little bit, but that to me I find it so compelling.
Well, we're only talking about 50 spots, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about the best players in the world for only 50 available spots to be playing this week at the BMW. It sets up your whole year when you make the BMW Championship. You get in all the 8 signature events. And I think from a viewer's perspective, when you turn on the TV and you have notable names, guys that have won all around the world and plenty of times on the PGA Tour, trying to make it here this week. That to me is a huge, interest to me if I'm watching or I'm out there on the golf course spectating or commentating on it. It's not like it was a couple years ago and how it was for so many years, where it's 126 versus the 125th guy. When we're talking about the talent differential for a guy's year, compared to the 50th guy from the 51st, from the 125th to the 126th, it's a huge gap. So I think that in itself has made it very enjoyable to watch, to spectate, and I think it made for a really compelling St. Jude, because you had young guys, you had old guys, and then you had a golf tournament that you thought was going to be a runaway, turned out not to be a runaway.
No, not at all. And by the way, I'm not going to apologize for it, but just to let you know, there's a lot of ambient sound happening here. I mean, this is being on site, right? I think we're still setting up some infrastructure here at Castle Pines, so that's what you're hearing. You're hearing some carts behind us, some assembly of various structures. But to get back to what you're talking about, and that's zero disrespect to number 126 on the list, but there is so much more intrigue. And we saw it last year at a number of stages. We talked about Wyndham, JT, Adam Scott, Shane Lowry on the wrong side of 70 playing their way into the playoffs. And now this year, Tom Kim ends up at 51st. And the reason he does is because Nick Dunlap just comes out of nowhere, needs a top 5 to make it to into signature events next year, to make it the BMW Championship, and does just that. And I mean,
luckily, we spoke that into existence. Luckily,
yeah. I mean, we're gonna say it. We're gonna own it. The Smylie Show bump is a very real thing. And so we got Nick Dunlap in a signature events. Wyndham Clark sat right here between us in Memphis and said, if the game's trending, trying to turn some of those top 5s or top 10s into top 5s. You got a little top 7 you got a tied for 7th this last week, and so he's trending as well. So I mean, when are we going to get a little cut of this action? Like I feel like we need some sort of thank you from all the players who catapulted.
If Eric Cole goes on to win this week, then we're gonna be cooking with some gas, baby.
Can you imagine? Yeah, that'd be good stuff. But I mean, do you? Let's start. Maybe we start with. We'll get to Nick Dunlap, but just with the winner of this tournament, Hideki Matsuyama, a roller coaster Sunday. I mean, I believe he had, was it a 5 or a 6 shot lead on Sunday starting the broadcast? I think he was at 17 under with second place at 12, and everyone was kind of, it was foregone conclusion he's going to win the tournament. How's the rest of the board going to shake out? And that is not the way it went down the stretch, but he did close in strong fashion. So what did you see from Hideki, a guy who usually has maybe not the best putter on tour, but this week led the field in strokes gained putting?
Yeah, that was the story going into Sunday, right? We have Hideki Matsuyama, who's been I'd say, inconsistent putter. When he gets a hot putter, watch out because his iron game is so good. As we look at Wyndham Clark last week, who joined us. What I noticed, though, with Hideki was on Sunday, and a lot of people, if you're watching our early coverage, you would have seen that Hideki had a totally different putter than the putter he was using the first 3 days warming up with it. So you're thinking to yourself, all right, maybe he's just trying to give everybody a chance. That was something that came to my mind. Or maybe this is his practice putter because it looked like his old gamer that he used to use, and maybe he just didn't feel comfortable with that putter. But he was first in putting the week. So from my perspective, I'm like, this is weird.
Yeah.
So my alarm bell's already sounding for the group I was in for Scotty Scheffler and Viktor Hovland. I'm like, these guys are going to be in it at the end because you got a guy changing putters on the practice screen. Anybody's seen that from a guy in their local member guest who's got the lead. Next thing you know, he goes in the pro shop.
Tinkerman,
yeah.
Yes. I mean, that's kind of my game.
And he's the ultimate tinkerer. Like he'll have 6 or 7 clubs behind him on a Saturday or Sunday, doesn't matter. He'll always have tons of different things on the putting green, on the driving range. So it's not unheard of for Hideki to do something like this, but it just was very odd.
Well, and like an odd week for him in general, in that his caddy got robbed. He didn't even have his usual caddy. His caddy gets robbed in London, so he's got that variable. Now the putter, it's an interesting to kind of delve inside what was going on in his camp this entire week.
It was a really weird week for him. His coach, his caddy, not able to make it because their passports were robbed in London. Hideki's wallet was stolen. So just a weird week when they show up. But he was obviously playing some fantastic golf. Finished bronze, 3rd place at the Olympics. So his game was sharp. But it'd be fair for us to say, he had a lot on his mind that week, and that if he didn't play well, we would have understood. But let's get a little bit more into the round on Sunday. Mm-hmm. It was I'd say for a guy who's leading the golf tournament, the ideal start, you don't make a bogey on the front 9, 1 birdie, and you feel like Hideki's just coasting. And I hear in my ear while I'm walking down the 13th fairway that there was some type of issue on the 7th hole, and they weren't going to say exactly what it was yet because they were still reviewing video evidence, but this is told to Hideki 5 holes later on the 12th hole. And I'll familiarize you with the ruling situation because he missed the green right on the 7th hole, and when a ball pitch mark is made, you're not allowed to fix it off of the green, especially if it's yours. And what was apparently what they saw in video review was that Hideki, as he addressed his ball, walked up to see where he wanted to land it because he was playing a bump and run shot, maybe near where that pitch mark would have been. What they eventually determined was that Hideki, his line that he was going on was a good 3 feet. I'm not sure if it was left or right, but it was not on his intended line. But it's unusual, though, for a player to step on a divot, especially when his ball is still off the green, because you totally could be penalized for that because you're not allowed to tap down anything off of the green.
Is that a strange rule to you in an era where we've made the change on the green where guys can tap down their lines? I mean, how do you feel about the rule itself?
It's just one of those rules that I think you can find an argument in it. Yeah. But let's just go to, all right, the 12th hole
Yeah.
in Memphis is one of the more difficult holes. The back nine in general, you can make bogeys in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
And so when a rules official comes up to you with that information on the 12th hole of a golf tournament, you have a
Not great.
4 or 5 shot lead on at the time. It's not exactly ideal,
Yeah,
but
no.
when you go back and listen to Hideki's interview after the round, he felt like he didn't do anything wrong. There was no worry from him or his caddy that, I think if you knowingly did something, I think that would have led you to maybe have some poor shots. And yes, he played poor down the stretch, and you can potentially draw the comparison game of, all right, he was told this on 12 and then kind of had some issues down the stretch. So it would just turn into just a wild last hour and a half.
Without a doubt. And I think that, he makes birdie at 16 and birdie at 18. I believe I had that correct. Or was it 17?
He birdied 17 and
17
18.
18, that's right.
But where it all flipped on its head was the 14th hole.
Yes.
The 14th hole, Hideki
Hits the ball in the water.
has an opportunity to just hit this ball in the middle of the green, go 2-putt, or even go 3-putt, and I can't, honestly, I don't even remember if he made the putt for bogey.
No, doubled.
So he made double,
Yeah.
because I'm obviously in the group in front. I just remember it was chaos. So he makes double there.
When it was after watching like Nick Dunlap, who needs this top 5, who takes a really aggressive line right over the top of the stick.
Did he miss that putt? So he made double there?
I that was to my recollection.
Because I know he doubled. I know he doubled the next hole.
We're gonna find out together.
He made the putt. He made bogey.
He made bogey.
He made bogey.
I had
The next
those 2 holes mixed up.
The
That's
next
right,
hole he made double. I was like, hold on. I don't think he went double. But then
That was a hole where he hit it left and he had a couple chips in the
yes. So he's in that rough behind the green, and honestly, it's the only shot that you have there is to try to play an explosion flop shot, get some spin, to give yourself a chance, and just one underneath it, because you can easily over bounce that and chunk it into the water beyond the green at 15. So when you get to 16 and par of that hole, all of a sudden, I'm with Viktor Hovland and Scotty's group, and on 15, I hear the ball. It went in the water. We hear the groan from the crowd. And that's when I was like, wait, what are my guys at all of a sudden? Because they were 4 shots back. And Victor and Scotty both hit it in tight at 15. Scotty lips out, which was the story of his weekend. Victor makes, and then he birdied 16. I was like, holy crap, he's now has a 1-shot lead going into 17.
Yeah. Well, and do you get credit for the Smylie Show bump for having taken a picture earlier in the week with Hideki with the bronze medal? Do we get bump points there at all?
Well, we definitely weren't if he didn't birdie 17 and 18. But since he birdied, and 17 is, I think it's, if you ask me, it's probably one of the hardest holes out at TPC Southwind. There's a penalty area that's not really in play, that kind of goes through the middle of the fairway. It's 350 off the tee. And for Hideki to go bogey double and then birdie 17,
right,
and then get on 18 and hit that fairway, you have no idea how hard that tee shot was on 18 to step up there, find the fairway.
Took a tight line there too.
Yeah, and then take it aggressively on his second shot, where all he needed was hit it to the right side of the green, 2-putt, win the golf tournament. He took it on and got it left of the pin and made birdie. So,
well, and there was that. To your point on 17, when there was that sort of swing happening where Hovland took the lead briefly, he hits his tee shot right on 17. You were with him there, right?
Yes.
And so and ends up making bogey.
Yeah.
And that was his opportunity to sort of.
He'll be kicking himself for that one.
Yeah.
His initial drop was a good lie. Second drop was in a terrible lie, and
the drop was brutal.
Hit it into a bunker where I felt like he should have gotten it up and down. But the pressure, obviously, in that situation, knowing that things are happening behind you, you can understand not getting up and down. But the next part about this that with Hideki that I think is just so interesting is that his last couple of years, I'm not going to say that he's disappeared, but it hasn't felt like Hideki's been the elite player that we've seen over the years. And what we've seen,
the Masters win, right? It wasn't,
What we've seen this year is a resurgence to form. His iron game is back to what we were accustomed to. And what I mean by that is when Hideki's one-arming shots and they're going to 15 feet, we know Hideki's back. And so that's something you saw all week. His iron game was crisp, and the putter was good. And the driver, he's always been a fairly good driver.
Right.
And there's one story that I found out about Hideki after this event that I wanted to get into, is that he loves fast food.
Chick-fil-A, right?
Big fast food guy. But this is the next part of this is that I heard that Hideki plans where he stays every single week based off where the IHOP is.
Wow.
I thought that was incredible intel.
Hideki.
So if you're at a local IHOP at a PGA Tour event, you might see Hideki Matsuyama.
We got Brian and Jackson here on our production team. So first of all, shout out to them because we have a robust setup this week that we're loving. But Brian and I are mere seconds away from an IHOP.
Yes.
So maybe we need to get him on over there.
No,
that's funny.
You're not going to have to get him on over there. You're going to see him. It's not a situation.
Maybe get breakfast tomorrow. Get a little stack of buttermilk pancakes and just see if we see Hideki in there. I didn't think people still ate at IHOP in 2024, but here you go.
Hideki Matsuyama. I've heard maybe he wears his green jacket in there from time to time. Wears a bronze medal. This is a guy that could eat and wherever he wants and foot whatever bill. But my man, he's got to start his week out with the pancakes. And
golly, imagine seeing Hideki Matsuyama in an IHOP. I mean, that'd just be.
There's a rumor that somebody from his team showed up with an IHOP coffee cup yesterday. So I'm not saying this is all false info. I'm just saying that we need to look into it.
I love this. I want to eat. That should be one of our video projects in the off season.
Go eat with Hideki at IHOP.
They're here for it, big time.
Let's do it.
Yeah, well, let's talk to Strixon, right? I'm sure we can make that happen, right?
Yeah. One last thing as we get off Hideki.
Okay.
Is, we talked about how his game maybe has fallen off a little bit, and I think what you have to attribute that to was injuries. He always was withdrawing with wrist, neck, back. So it seems like he's more healthy now than he has been over the last couple of years. So that's just something to mention is that, these guys' game, they don't disappear. It's sometimes injuries just lead these guys down holes where, they just can't play to their maximum potential.
It's such a good point, one that I don't think we think about enough. I think we just are trained to
they're playing terrible.
Guys, playing terrible. But I mean, how about Jordan Spieth, who we've talked about a lot?
Yeah.
The announcement that he's going to go ahead and get surgery done on his wrist is probably long overdue at this point.
Yeah.
And he made a good effort to try to take care of that in a way that if you can avoid going under the knife, you want to try avoid going under the knife. But to the point now where you look at the last couple of years and, he's a little bit off. Well, he's been dealing with something that probably needed attention for a good period of time. Or how about a guy like, even though he made a run on the back nine on Sunday, Jake Knapp missing out on signature event qualification, that top 50, and watching him with that elbow brace on all week. It's like these guys get banged up, and you can't play your best golf if that's a physical state that you're in.
I would like to get an update from Jake Knapp's workout off-season regimen because my boy's going to get back in the gym and throw some weight around. If you haven't listened to our Jake Knapp episode, that's a good one. He walks through his meathead phase he went through. That's a good one to go back and revisit.
He's going to get back there like Latimer in the program and start throwing him, smashing his head through windows, get into the gym, just get that elbow right.
We need him to
that's
embrace.
second YouTube project.
Yes.
We should probably do the IHOP.
Wait, who's going to work out with him? Are we just going to watch him?
We're going to work out with him.
Wait, we can't work out with Jake Knapp.
Should we eat IHOP before we work out with them or after we work out with them? I think both are a bad situation.
I think we watch him.
We watch him work out.
Yeah, or we send Jackson.
There we go. Our resident D1. I was going to say, you're also a D1 athlete. I didn't forget about you, but he played football. So that's, he's probably better suited to working out with Jake Knapp.
That's a great point.
Let's get on to another man who was recently playing D1 collegiate athletics, Nick Dunlap.
That seemed like that was the story, right? It was Hideki and all that went on with the golf tournament. But the storyline, when you get to the 18th fairway and you have two completely different stories that you're telling, which is Hideki has to make par and Nick Dunlap has to make par for two totally different line items. I just thought that is what was the beauty of the final pairing yesterday.
Well, and I thought it was so cool talking to him at the beginning of the week, and it's a clip we pulled afterward and put on socials where you're asking him, could you ever imagine, post USAM sitting here in this position? And I think he said something to the effect of, you told me, you won 2 collegiate events, you made some teams. I'd be like, man, that's a pretty good year. He's won 2 tour events, and now he's, top 5 at a FedEx Cup playoff event to make his way into all signature events in 2025, which is an incredible rise. I'm so looking at his sort of week here. He goes from 68th to 48th, 67, 65, 66, 69. For you, what stood out for Nick? I mean, does it have anything to do with his golf game, or is it just more a testament to what you have to do mentally to do what he did and make it where he is now?
I think what Nick Dunlap has is such a high level of IQ, golf IQ, and meaning just of how to play the game, knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are. And if you haven't had an opportunity to listen to Nick Dunlap speak for 20 minutes with us last week, previewing the FedEx St. Jude, I'd suggest you to do it. But just to poll what kind of Nick talked about, which was, I asked him, I said, hey, Nick, if you had the opportunity to go work on your game all this year away from the PGA Tour, do you think that would have helped or hurt you? And I thought his answer was so interesting, because when you get out on the PGA Tour, it's so hard to go and say, hey, I want to improve my chipping, I want to improve my driving. And what he said, he's incrementally improved both. And I thought that is just so difficult to do, because his strengths are his putting and his iron game. Mm-hmm. And yesterday on the coverage, and I've talked to Josh Gregory about this, he's been helping him with his golf game and mainly his chipping, and also some mental aspects of his game with his ball striking. He had mentioned that Nick Dunlap had made more improvements than any player that he has ever had with his chipping in 1 year. Wow. So I think his ability to process concepts, information, and be able to take it and be able to go compete with it shows with his resiliency, his work ethic, and just to be able to go out and trust his mechanics and learn on the fly on these new golf courses every week. He didn't even know where the 18th green was last week when he got on property. So he found out where the 18th hole was because he was in that final group on Sunday. So awesome to see. And one other quick note about Nick. I'm gonna put you on the spot here. What do you think Nick Dunlap's official world golf ranking is?
Okay, so last week, if I recall correctly, I think he was 43rd-ish, 44th-ish, somewhere in there, and leading into the week. And based on the way he played this week with that field, I'm gonna guess he's like 32nd now, maybe.
He's 36, and if you had not seen that he was low 40s, you probably would have said, here's a guy that's 68th coming into the week. Any other player you put in that category, especially as a rookie, you're like, oh, he's probably, around 100th in the official world golf ranking. So the fact that he was already in the top 50 going into last week speaks to how well he's played. He didn't get the 500 FedEx Cup points at an Amex. So the fact that he had to go win twice to make it to here this week, and he still has work to do to make the Tour Championship. But what a year Nick Dunlap has put together. The fact that he's, just been the first amateur to win since Phil Mickelson, and then goes out and wins to, an off-site event, or what do we call them? What do you call them?
Opposite field.
Opposite field event, sorry. Goes and wins one of those.
We'll work that into. We'll pitch that an off-site event.
I just think it's just incredible, man. And let's think about as well with Nick Dunlap. At 36 now, he's basically locked up himself into the majors next year, and especially the Masters.
Yes.
That cutoff's going to be at the end of the year, and I think there's no chance that he falls outside the top 50 because the Amex doesn't get him in because he was an amateur. I don't think. Maybe it did. I don't think it does.
It's a good question.
That's a good question.
It's a good question because...
But let's say it didn't. He still played his way into the Masters.
Well, what was it? Was it the Masters where his US Am win got him into the Masters, but he was playing as a pro? I think that was the Masters, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was.
Was he? Yeah, I can't remember if he played. I don't remember.
He did.
He did play. Okay.
Yeah, he did.
A lot of times, I don't think he wasn't able to play the Open.
I'm trying to remember. There was
he wasn't able to play the Open
because I thought that was the.
I think the Masters allowed it and the Open didn't.
That's so interesting. Yeah, because that was the one major he did not play this last year.
Yeah, and he would have played as a U.S. Amateur champion, but they didn't hold up the end of the bargain, which is, come on, guys. RNA, what are we doing
It's a tough
here?
miss.
He won the U.S. Amateur.
Well, it makes you wonder then if they honored his, if the Amex win got him into the Masters, the U.S. Am win, or if that's one of the tournaments that
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's beside the point. Whatever. We'll get down a rabbit hole.
we could do a tournament eligibility talk for hours here. But I mean, regardless,
He's playing next year is what I'm saying.
He's playing next year, and I think the point you make is a really interesting one because there are so many young talents in the game, and some of them have just obvious talents, like, Gordon Sargent hits the ball a mile. Jackson Coyvin's a phenomenal putter. You can see, like, it jumps off the screen what they do well. And not saying Nick doesn't have those qualities as well, but it's those intangible, the ability to kind of learn and process information and just figure out a way to shoot a really good score consistently that is going to keep him around on this tour. And he's proved it in less than a year.
Hey, you mentioned this, talking about the President's Cup. Look out. I really have this weird feeling that if Nick goes on a run, makes it to the Tour Championship, and finds himself inside the top 10 at the end of the year, I think he gets picked.
I don't see
I really think there's a good chance that Nick Dunlap's playing the President's Cup.
And this is my own just personal feeling on how I would be choosing a President's Cup or Ryder Cup team. It has nothing to do with what's actually going to happen, but I would just be saving 2 spots for guys who I'm trying to grow,
Yeah,
and
I just have this feeling, man. I just have this feeling that he's about to have a good week, and then make it to the Tour Championship and have another good week and play himself into Royal Montreal and the President's Cup team.
We'll go back into the archives and pull out the Memphis interview if he does indeed do that. The flip side of Nick Dunlap's jump, unfortunate for another friend of the show, Tom Kim, and just misses out by a spot, and I think that speaks again to what you were talking about, where this is the drama of these playoffs and this competition, is that you're going to have really good players who miss out. It just feels like a tough fall for Tom after he really narrowly misses out on a win at Travelers. We're thinking he's primed for a nice little run to close the season, and at the Olympics was in contention for a medal. We know how much that would have meant to him, especially in the context of military service, for Korea. And then you obviously you have this miss on signature events next season. Now I expect he'll be getting sponsor exemptions or will be playing well enough to make his way in through a next 10 or a swing 5 category. But just reflecting on the year for Tom and just where we go from here. Although I will say the one nice thing upside, guy plays well at the Shriners. He can play well at some fall events and be right there.
The sixth major. The sixth major.
The sixth major.
Listen, I think with Tom Kim, his finish is something that it's gonna take a week or two to kind of get over that. I was on the golf course with him on Sunday for his beginning of his back nine all the way through the 14th hole. He hit the middle of the green on 14. I was like, he's in. He's made it. That's over. Locked Tom Kim up into BMW. And I go out to follow Scotty's group, and I'm on the 3rd hole. And I hear my producer say, hey, Tom Kim's got to make this putt potentially to even just get to 50 first. And this is for bogey at 18. I was like, what happened? And I pull it up, bogey 16, the easiest hole in the course, double 17, and then doubles 18. You're just like, I think this speaks to, first off, how difficult 16, 17, and 18, maybe not so much 16. 16 was fairly easy, back into the breeze. But 17 was brutal, and 18, absolutely difficult. And there were double bogeys on those holes. But I think from what I saw from Tom on the holes before that, I didn't see that in his game. You just have to attribute that to just a little bit of pressure, not being able to pull off the shots, and maybe not quite understanding as much time and score and playing as a little bit more conservative maybe as he could have. But when things start getting going that way and you start to feel that angst of like, where do I stand? I think it's hard to settle down. And I think that's the only way I can see, besides, golf is really hard and this golf course is very penal and you're a little off, you can make doubles. But I think that you can contribute to that's the pressure that these guys feel and how badly they want to be on this range behind us here this week.
Oh, absolutely. And just kind of looking at the group that moved in, the group that moved out, we talked a little bit about Eric Cole we're having on. He moved his way in. We've talked about Nick Dunlap. Viktor Hovland, of course, the 3rd out of that group, who made a big jump, almost won the tournament, finishes tied for 2nd at 15 under with Xander Schauffele. And then the group that played their way out, Tom Kim, of course. We discussed Jake Knapp, maybe a little bit banged up, and then Mackenzie Hughes is the 3rd of that group. One guy just to touch on briefly, Denny McCarthy goes from 45th to, as it stands right now, 30th.
He's the guy right now.
Through a championship. your guy on Fridays with Smylie, it's a good time for Denny to play well, and he was talked openly and candidly, with you and others about just the physical stuff he's gone through. When he came on the podcast last year, going through the back stuff, finding a nice little rhythm now, and he's got
a torn labrum right now in his hip too, so it's he's a little banged up. So I just hope that he can have one good week this week, make the Tour Championship, and if he needs to get that all taken care of, he's set up for the year after that.
Without a doubt. Well, there are some big names that I feel like we can hold until our preview on Wednesday. I just mentioned Xander Schauffele, Viktor Hovland, both 15 under. Those are guys that are going to be in contention here, trying to make one last push to get ready for Eastlake. Scotty at 14 under. You were with this group on Sunday. Comes up short again. And Sam Burns trending a little bit with the top 5 finish.
Yes.
Tied with Nick Dunlap. He finishes at 13 under. But we'll save that for our Wednesday show, because now we're going to get to a conversation with Eric Cole. As we mentioned before, shoots 63 on Sunday at TPC Southwind to make his way into the top 50. Really looking forward to that conversation, so we will get to that right now. Welcome back to the Smylie Show, where we have yet another special guest joining us, Eric Cole, 46th in the FedEx Cup standing, courtesy of a final round 63 in the FedEx St. Jude Championship that vaulted you in. And Eric, here, we went deep here, the stats and information department. We got a stat I think you're going to like. There were 2 players that vaulted their way from outside the top 50, inside the top 50 this last week. One was Nick Dunlap. The other was yourself. Here's the good news for you. Nick Dunlap joined the show on Monday last week. Mm-hmm. So I think this means we got a lot of good juju for you this week.
A lot of good points.
I like it. To Atlanta.
Yeah, I like it.
And Wyndham Clark, too. He finished top 10.
That's right. It's just,
we were a top 10 machine pod.
So this is good luck. I like it. I'll take what I can get. So that sounds great.
Well, Eric, let's just unpack the day yesterday, right? I mean, when you started the day, expectations for the round, did you have a number in your head? Did you know what you needed to do? Or did you just show up and you said, you know what? I'm just going to go try to make a bunch of birdies and see where the chips fall.
Yeah, no, it's kind of funny. I played really poorly on Saturday. And actually did well to shoot 2 over. Like, I should have shot way higher than that. So my expectations were very low. Saturday night I booked a flight home on Sunday afternoon, so I wasn't feeling
it really. That's a pro trick, by the way. That's a pro trick.
Yeah, I wasn't feeling. Just my ball striking wasn't there, and then obviously I wanted to play well, and I warmed up kind of just okay, and then got off to a crazy fast start, and then once that happened, I was like, all right, now I'm kind of in it, and just kept trying to hit one good shot after the next.
And yesterday, what time did you tee off?
7:50 or something.
So that to me was a fairly big advantage, because in the morning I was out there. There was hardly any wind. Yes, it was so hot, but later as the day went on, we were getting gusts up to 15, 20 miles an hour.
Yeah, I obviously wasn't out there in the afternoon, but it definitely seemed like it. The forecast was for it to get windier, and it looked like it was playing tougher later in the day versus when I was playing.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
We got sort of a detailed sketch of that day, and I think it's worth going through because it's a real roller coaster. Okay. So just for everyone keeping score at home, 3-3-3 to start the day, which was birdie, eagle. You move from 58th to 52nd on the FedEx Cup list. You make a birdie on 8 to go from 54th inside to 48th, right? So you're 50th when you make par at 10, but by the time you get to the 11th tee and put a tee in the ground, you're back to 52nd. You're on the outside.
It's hectic.
And birdie at 13, you go 52nd to 47th. Birdie at 15, go 48 to 44, and birdie at 16 to go 45th to 38. So sitting comfortably inside. How do we feel after the bogey at 18 to go from 41st to 48th?
Yeah, I didn't know a lot of that stuff going on. There's some leaderboards out there and there's some projections that come out, but like when you're playing, you don't see really anywhere near that type of volatility. So I obviously knew that I was doing good stuff. I was making birdies, and every time I looked at it, it seemed to be getting a little better. And then, bogeying 18 wasn't what I had in mind, but with the tee shot, I think I did well to do that.
It was a good bogey. If you didn't get a chance to watch Eric Cole on the 18th hole, you get on the tee, and we set it up as, because I was on the ground, I'm listening to the guys in the booth. They're like, really just anything out to the right, he's going to be able to coast through. And next thing you know, I hear, oh my gosh, he pulled it. So what's going through your brain when the ball comes off the face and you realize I'm going to have to fight maybe a little harder than I was hoping to?
Yeah, I didn't want to bail out to the right. Those bunkers aren't real great, and right's not. It's better than the water, but it's not a real great spot to be. So I was trying to kind of take as strong a line as I could, and just hit it off the toe, and kind of immediately knew that it was going in the water. So and it didn't cross or anything like that. So. It wasn't what I was hoping to look up for on that 18th tee. But then, after that, it was actually a lot of decision making with my caddy, be aggressive with the next one.
Where to drop, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
you can go.
I could have gone
40
back,
yards
probably
back.
40 yards back, and hooked like maybe a 5-wood or
That's an
4-iron
easy shot.
even. Yeah. So that was an option, but I don't think I could have ever gotten it on the green. So without being able to get it on the green, it just seemed like a huge risk for not enough upside. So decided to lay it up and hit a decent wedge in there that went a little further than I thought, and then made that putt. So
I mean, the putt was fantastic. You walked it in so nonchalantly, making a 15-footer to make it to the BMW. And we all talked about this the entire year, how important it is to get inside the top 50. You can plan your entire schedule next year based on those signature events. So first off, congratulations there.
Thank you.
And last question as it pertains to yesterday. When you're on the 18th tee, did you or your caddy know exactly where you stood? And did you ask for any clarification while you're on the hole on what you may have needed to do? But there was so much that could have happened, right?
Yeah, I mean, like you said earlier, I teed off so early. There's so much movement that other guys can, influence where I stand. So didn't really talk about where I was or anything like that on the tee. But then once I hit in the water, I was kind of asking like my caddy Reed. I was like, if I make a bogey, do you think that's good?
Yeah,
It made a huge difference with how aggressive I had to be with that second shot. Or third shot, I guess, after dropping. But if he thought I had to make a par, then it's a completely different story.
You just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, he was like, if you make bogey, you should be good. So that's kind of the only time we really talked about it.
The putt goes in for bogey. Did you feel like that was enough?
Yeah, I kind of did. You don't know for sure, but like I said, I had that little brief convo with Reed, my caddy, and he kind of said that bogey should be good. So as soon as I made that, I was kind of like, all right, now I feel a little bit better about it.
Eric, if you'll indulge me here for a second, I was on day 2 of a 2-day tournament yesterday. On the 13th tee, probably had several seltzers, and I turned the guy into my cart, and I was like, I have no clue how these guys do this, playing the Memphis Heat 4 straight days. So there's that. Then there's the way you approach playing professional golf, which is you are like the Iron Man. You play as much, as often as you possibly can. Is there ever a point where it's a situation like yesterday where it's just crazy hot, crazy humid, where you're like, okay, I'm feeling a little bit of fatigue. Like, I'm not sure how much more golf I can play.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's just part of playing professional golf. It could definitely wear on you. But for me, it's just such a huge, privilege to be on the PGA Tour. I try and play as many times as I can. And, it took me so long to get there that, like I said, I just try and play in as many events as I can because it's just such a cool spot to be.
Does anybody love golf more than you on the PGA Tour? So if I had to put that into a category and you named other guys, I mean, you'd have to maybe throw Sung Jae in there. He's the other guy.
He plays a lot. Yeah. I think.
Who are the other guys that you see week to week? They're like, oh, you're playing here again this year?
Ben Griffin plays a lot.
Yeah, he does.
But I think for me, it took me so long to get here. So I think if more guys kind of took my route to the PGA Tour, they might play a little bit more. So,
just to put it into context, Charlie, we just did our stats department right before Eric came up.
Stats department's hard at work, by the way. Really churning some stuff out.
It's a lot of notes, yeah.
37 starts in 2023. And then 28 starts in 24. Remind you, he did win the Rookie of the Year last year. So an incredible rookie season. And then again, this year to be able to make it to the BMW Championship and an opportunity to make it to the Tour Championship. You're just compounding back-to-back really great seasons on tour. You got to be proud of that.
Yeah, no, for sure. This is where you want to be when you kind of start the year. You definitely want to make it to that top 50. It's so important for all the elevated events next year. Something I'm definitely proud of, and it's not been a totally smooth, just normal year for me. I kind of had a little bit of a dry spell there in the middle of the summer where I didn't play great, but kind of trending back, hopefully to where my game is going in the right direction here at the end.
Obviously, still a lot of business to take care of this year. I'm curious because I believe you're 14th on the President's Cup standings. So a couple more events left here. I also believe this is the last week where points count toward that. Is that something you think about at all?
Not really, no. I think, that's kind of a byproduct of doing kind of what you're supposed to on a week-to-week basis. So I focus a lot more on those type things versus, where I stand on the President's Cup. I know I'm probably not in a good spot, so I got a lot of work to do this week.
Well, the Smylie Show, I guess, right at the beginning, we've had guys playing well on here, so this is the bump. This is the bump.
Could be. I like it. I'll take it. I'll take any good luck I can get.
Well, why don't you give us a bit of a summary just on the state of your game the entire year, what you've worked on, what do you feel like your strengths have been, and what are your weaknesses that you've had this year that you've had to put an emphasis on?
Yeah, sure. I started the year off pretty solid. Ball striking was good. My chipping and putting is almost usually pretty solid, so that's been good most of the year. But ball striking was really good to start the year, and then more recently it's kind of gotten back there. But there was a little bit of a lull there in the summer where we played a stretch of really hard courses.
Where'd you out, right?
Yeah, through that middle of the year where it just seemed like every course was so difficult. You had no real chance to recover when you hit a bad shot. It was just like an automatic bogey. So that kind of wore on me, and I think just made my ball striking not being as sharp. It made it look a lot worse. I'm kind of glad to be through that stretch, and we've played a few more playable courses recently, which I prefer.
It always feels like once you get through the Memorial, you're like, I can take a deep breath in the U.S. Open. And
exactly.
It's like Memorial U.S. Open. After that, it's like finally
for sure.
some greens that are receptive. I have wedges in my hand.
Yeah, you can actually stop the ball on them. So.
You sort of burst onto the scene last year, that finish at the Honda, I guess now the Cognizant, you and Chris Kirk. And, as we kind of talked about, 43rd last season, made it into signature events. This season, now you've done the same by finishing 46, could even improve on that, but in signature events for 2025. Just curious, like in that sort of the last 2 years, what you feel like the biggest thing you learned is on tour, and how you kind of play that forward for goal setting for 2025.
Yeah, I mean, biggest thing I've learned probably is that, you don't have to play perfect golf. I think a lot of times when you're not out here on tour, you watch the coverage or something like that, and you're seeing guys who are playing some of the best weeks of their life, and you're seeing every shot they hit, and it just looks like they're not missing any shots.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that I've learned is, you do obviously have to play well to have a good finish, but you don't necessarily have to play perfect. You're allowed to hit a few bad shots here and there, and to just not beat yourself up too much and try and be too much of a perfectionist.
Is there any PGA Tour player before you came out here that you tried to model your game after?
Good question. Not really. Honestly, I can't think of one.
Well, can I give you my comparison
Yeah,
of
sure.
like your game?
I'm happy to hear it.
Your game reminds me so much of Zach Johnson's.
Okay.
I think
Thank
y'all
you.
have
I'll
similar
take that.
strengths, similar ball flights. I think you
Yeah.
carry yourselves in a very similar manner. Y'all both cash a lot of checks.
I'll take that.
So
Yeah, I'll take that. as a
that's my
compliment for
comparison.
sure.
Any course I feel like that suits Zach Johnson's game, I feel like suits your game too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I played with Zach in New Orleans this year, and he was playing great, and I kind of saw a little bit of that too. Like we both hit a little lower draw, and when you play that style, there's definitely courses that fit your game more than maybe some of the U.S. Opens and Memorial type of courses.
For sure.
Going in a little bit of a different direction here, but something that's close to home, close to your heart for you is Sam Saunders news yesterday. He's retiring.
Yeah.
I know you guys obviously have an amazingly close relationship. Just your reflections on his career and just that news yesterday.
Yeah, it was. I'd been talking to him a little bit throughout the year, and he didn't have a great year, Corn Ferry wise, and he wasn't in the best spot. just with his game and his thoughts about golf. So I talked to him and kind of knew it was coming. But it's sad for me, you know. I wish we could have both been, because our careers kind of, like I played Korn Ferry when he played the PGA Tour, and then I got to the PGA
So never
Tour.
got there
so
at
it's
the
just
same
like so
time.
brutal that, you know, like it's just like I'm sad for him and his golf and stuff like that, but it's sad for me selfishly because we never really got a chance to play a ton of golf on the PGA Tour together. But you know, he lives only an hour from here, so hopefully see him this week and hang out with him a little bit and spend some time with him and his family. So
I got to give Sam Saunders a lot of props. So one of my last professional events I've played in, this was 3 years ago. This was the Colorado Open. The golf course was somewhere near the airport, and I'm paired with Sam Saunders. And I get out here, my game is in a disarray. I don't know what I have, and I show up, I get off to a decent start, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, just the same stuff that's happened to me over the years. Like, I have just totally lost. I can't get it off the tee. I might as well have 2 golf balls in front of me and try to hit one of them because it was just a mess. And I get to a point where I'm like, I can't play anymore today. Like, I got to go. And Sam, like, kind of pulled me aside after and was like, hey, I got to go. And he could not have been more kind and more relatable and struggles because he's had them. He's had success as well. But it just says a lot about him as a person, as a professional, to be able just to say, hey, man, I know what you're going through.
Yeah.
And it's not easy, but I'm sure he's probably, if I ever see him again soon, hopefully we have a good laugh about that day because it was hilarious. Like, it's just when I get to the golf ball, my face might as well have been looking like over here. You know, it was just a tough day, but really just speaks to the type of person that Sam is.
No, he's a great guy. We've been friends for a long time, and you know, that story is a perfect example of Sam's just got a great like perspective on life. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't make golf too big of a deal or anything like that, and you know, he's a great person to have, like, you know, a friend of yours or on your side. So
right. And if I was Sam Saunders too, I think I would want to live in the Denver area too. This is the nicest cool breeze after Memphis last week.
it is nice.
I wish you guys could feel this cool air through the camera right now because it feels incredible. I'm sure you're excited to get some work done. And before you go, just any impressions of this property, what you expect from the golf course? Have you done any research about this course? And just so you know, this is a huge upslope. You haven't hit balls yet, so when you're not hitting it up there, don't be discouraged. Nobody's hitting it up in the air on the edge.
Talking about my ball flight, Zach Johnson and I would not like this range very much, so I haven't hit balls yet. But no, it seems like a beautiful area and looks like a golf course that's in perfect shape from what I've seen. So with that and perfect weather, it looks like. So it's a lot of good things kind of trending together for this week, so looking forward to it.
I hear it's actually not a great walking golf course. I hear it's
bad for the caddies, I've heard. So
it's a caddy nightmare course. I've heard some players compare it to potential Maui, which has always been deemed the worst one of the year.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
We'll have to see. I think y'all get to take carts out today, so that's exciting.
Yeah, no, I think you know, I'm looking forward to this week, and hopefully Reed, my caddy, can get through the hills.
All right, well, Charlie and I are about to record this BMW recap. Hopefully you're just right over here, and we can just, you know, you can come back and you can watch your swings on the
I'm not sure I want to see that.
I'm
not sure I want to see that. So.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah,
congratulations on making it here, and best of luck this week.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Great conversation with Eric Cole. Really interesting to kind of dig into his year, and we're, of course, keeping it rolling here on the driving range at Castle Pines. Smylie, you're gonna hate me after this week. I'm just gonna drive you nuts with all sorts of random stories about my very amateurish golf experiences. I just had a laugh after talking about Hideki's putter tinkering, and I dropped in a little club championship question with Eric Cole. We had a guy this week who literally bought a stock broomstick off the lab website. First round he used it was a club championship.
Love that. Did he hoop?
Sicko move. He was hooping on the green.
Of course,
I was following the leaderboard, and you know, I don't know how the stat breakdown was, but it was probably less than he was hoping to hoop, judging by the scores that were posted. But
still love that play.
Great. It's an amazing sicko move. So just had to get that one in the notes while I was at it.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
It's really good stuff. So on we go with just kind of wrapping up last week in Memphis, moving forward to this week, or the second playoff event, of course, the last one before we get to the Tour Championship in Atlanta. And we noted a few names before the break that we're going to probably break down in more depth on our Wednesday show, but just kind of hitting them quickly on the way out. So Xander finishes tied for second at 15 under. The group you had on Sunday, Viktor also finishes tied for second at 15 under, and Scotty Scheffler finishes fourth at 14 under. And then, of course, we noted Sam Burns finding some form, playing good this week, ties for fifth at 13 under. So just of that group, takeaways as we're looking at both this week, but guys who are pushing to try to win this Tour Championship.
Yeah, definitely. When we get to our Wednesday show, I will have seen the golf course, kind of know what are the strengths of the place, what's required. So we'll definitely get into more of these top guys and how it suits their game. I mean, to be fair, their games are suited at a lot of places, and I have a high suspicion that I think all three guys are going to have good weeks and that this golf course will suit their games. But
I have to laugh every week looking at the leaderboard, and it's like, man, wasn't really looking at a course fit for Scotty. It's like, guess what? Every course fits Scotty. They all fit him.
Yes. All right. So I think you got to start with Viktor, right? Because he was the guy coming into the week that expectations for, I think, himself, everybody in his team, anybody that, follows the game. I felt you would have said that if he, squeezed through into the top 50, you would have said, you know what, that's probably the progression track that he's on right now.
He was, is 57th, I think, is that
57th.
Right?
Yeah. So needed somewhere around a top 12, top 13 finish, I would say. And, I was on the range early in the week and watching Viktor hit golf balls, and Joe Mayo, after Viktor hit this really nice mid long iron, he looked over at me, just started smiling and said, "That's more like it. That's how she looked. That's how she used to look." And so, going into the week, I'm thinking, you know what, maybe should I be buying stock on Viktor this week? Is this going to be the week in which, this thing kind of starts getting going again? And, after he shoots even par the first round, expectations probably for himself are man, I got to grind my tail off to go make it inside the top 50. And then he plays one bogey over the next 36 holes on Friday and Saturday. And then Sunday, when I'm out there watching him, he really didn't have his best stuff, but it was a classic case of a guy that knew what he had that day. His misses were a little tighter. His good shots were really good. His bad shots weren't terrible. So he was able to manage his game really well that day, just keep himself in the golf tournament. I don't think he had any intention of winning as the day went on because Hideki had such a big lead. But after he made that putt on 15, and he gets to 16, and Hideki's double had not been posted yet, so he made birdie. So he shows up on 17 green, still doesn't really even know where he stands, and makes bogey, and that's on 17 green. I'm watching him, standing right behind him, and he looks over at the scoreboard, and he realized the situation. And in my head, I'm like, man, God, if he just knew that a par on 17 and he's in a great spot and go potentially birdie 18, go win the golf tournament. But that was a step in the right direction, and if you're curious on what Joe Mayo and Viktor are working on, I thought it was really interesting for the swing nerds out there. What Joe told me that they're trying to do, they're trying to get the butt of the club in the downswing to work more out. Okay. So work more out. So versus coming towards his belly button, working more towards the golf ball. And then the one thing they're trying to avoid is to have the shaft not be steep when he does that. So he doesn't want that shaft looking like it's on the top of his right forearm. He wants, or his left forearm, I should say, and down the line. He wants it much more laying shallow and flatter on this right forearm. And if you try to do that, it's very easy to get steep when you do that. So that's the swing thought he has right now, and that's what he used to have when he was playing really well and hitting it nice. And they're back in that same motor pattern. You're starting to see the short game match it as well. And the putter is what I felt like kept him in the ball game, which he's always been a really good putter,
Yeah, well, and I think that's what we saw at the end of last season. And it's so interesting to sit here and think about what would have been. Let's say Viktor doesn't play well this week, and he misses out on top 50, and he misses out on qualification automatically for signature events next season. What kind of conversation would we be here having? Because
long off season,
and we were talked to Viktor last fall on this show, and very legitimately asked a question about, hey, we're talking about Scotty, Jon Rahm, Rory McIlroy, and do you feel like you're one of the best players, if not the best player in the world? And he, it was not unreasonable for him to say, yeah, I do feel like those guys are incredible, but I do feel like that's a belief I need to have. And just the way he played down the stretch to win the Tour Championship, the way he played at the Ryder Cup, alongside Ludwig Oberg, in that famous 9-7 dismantling.
Did not miss a shot.
Scotty and Brooks. And so it's what an interesting progression of this year. But to me, I think just the form he's finding now, the way he just kind of played well in that big spot, being back together with Joe Mayo, everything feels like it's coming back together for him. And maybe the year we thought he was going to have this year is the one we're going to see in 2025 with all that stuff kind of back in place.
Yeah, and the fact that he did make it here, right? So his reflection on this season, he's able to take now positives in the fact that he was able to go have success at the FedEx St. Jude Championship in the playoffs. And now instead of sitting at home wondering about, God, I cannot believe this season, now he's able to learn from the experience this year and realize, okay, I'm never going to do that again, which is try to go reinvent the wheel and strive for this perfection that he didn't need to go try to find.
Yeah, it's fantastic for him. And I sincerely hope we get to have him back on the show at some point, whether it's during these playoffs or another full unpack in the offseason, because that was such a fantastic conversation. Will be interesting to see just what he thinks about the way he played this year. And shoot, he's got 2 more weeks left in the regular season.
He's an interesting interview. I hope we get him on soon.
It could be some fireworks here the next couple of weeks if he gets it done. To just close the show on one where maybe instead of doing an in-depth unpack of the top 50 category, that's something we can kind of do in the off-season and just kind of evaluate how it went. But just in brief, from a treetops level here, the projected turnover for that top 50 category was in the 34 to 38% range, and it was tracking the last couple of weeks at 38%, 19 players out, and that's where we ended up for the season. So just
surprised.
It's interesting, isn't it?
I thought it was going to be 40%. I really did. I thought there'd be, of the 50 guys from last year, I thought, I think 40 would have been my guess at about how many guys would be back in that category. But it just goes to show you got to go and play good golf. And even though you're in the signature events, you still have to play well.
Without a doubt. And I think, and this has been our guy, Robops or RoboPZ, we should reach out to him and clarify how he wants us to pronounce his Twitter handle. But he's been on it all season long, tracking these categories. And so I think that it's the one thing he notes is that with the multiplier in these points the last couple of weeks, it could have ended up at 32. It's actually, this is where it gets really kind of tricky, where you get some of these playoff events, 2 of them, where a bunch of guys can play their way back in, and all of a sudden that number changes. So that's an interesting one to kind of keep track of. But it's one I definitely want to kind of dig into his list in the offseason and honestly maybe try to kind of profile the type of guy that moved in to see if we can't predict what's going to happen next year.
We just want the most fair system, and I think that's all what the players want, to where you don't feel like you're at such a disadvantage to start the year to be not in the signature events. And I think what we learned this year is how important it is to get into that next 10 category and to make that something that you're striving for. When you get an opportunity at these open events and you're near the lead, that's, to get into these Aon Swing 5 and the next 10, these players are going to start putting an emphasis on these open events to make sure that the guys that are not in the top 50, it's so crucial to just get, whether it's just 2 events of signature events, how much that can help at the end of the year when it comes down to what we saw yesterday at the St. Jude. It can come down to, only a couple points.
It's amazing. And Eric Cole will just play all of them anyway because he just loves golf.
Y'all two need to go on a tour, man. How much y'all like playing a golf?
Ooh, look, golf trip with Eric Cole.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I regret not asking him in our interview is Eric, what are your top 3 hobbies outside of golf? Do you have any? Because I actually think about this sometime about myself. It's I really don't. I'm just kind of boring. I like to play golf, watch golf, and then drive my son around in my golf cart. I need to read a book or 2.
No, you're a podcaster.
I'm a podcaster, so that's a hobby, I guess. Yeah. Question mark, but
yeah,
well, it's something.
It's something.
I don't know what it is, but this has been a fun little debut, little kicking our week off here on the range here at Castle Pines, and we have more content coming, of course, on site the rest of this week. Got a Wednesday show where we're gonna preview the tournament this week. We're going to have a player join us. We might have not only a current player, but a legendary former PGA Tour pro who has a real strong connection and affinity for this place to help us kind of get a feel for this golf course and the tour stop that was here for a number of years before it went away. So that'll be a lot of fun. And of course, we'll bring you the one and done picks, which I think we had an okay, respectable week this last week, but
I'm just upset. I had Hideki on my brain the whole week and ended up going Sung JM. So
that's how it goes sometimes.
that's how it goes.
So
I need to be more have a little bit more conviction in my picks next week.
we have a couple more chances to cook up some winners for you. We will hopefully do that this week, but we of course appreciate you watching and listening, and we can't wait to have you right back here. Join us again for more content from the BMW Championship on Wednesday. Talk to you then.
I listen to this podcast. It's really cool. And
All of our lovely fans and subscribers, but make sure you like and subscribe.
It's cool to see what you guys are doing. I know golf fans appreciate it, but we do too, so please keep it up.
For all the good people of YouTube, like and subscribe.
You guys have some good takes, so I'm happy to come on and shoot the